I got word that some of y'all are getting these documents, and you're going out here and you don't know what they are, and that is your fault, because you have the right to ask me questions about it. If you sit there with that document and you don't understand it, and you don't write a question down and send it up here, how can I try to answer what you're questioning? So when you get these documents, read them, and if there's questions on them, then write them up here, and I'll try to answer them. Otherwise, you can do like a lot of people do and call me, and I'll try to answer them in between answering somebody else. So, but it's getting to be and I'm not putting anything on y'all. I'm glad that this is going. It's going all over the country. And Larry will tell you that there's groups everywhere now, and they're getting the tapes from Larry, and then they're passing them on and doing all this other. And the only thing I'm here really to do is to teach your freedom. The rest of it is up to you. But until you understand you're free and are created that way, and this document you got tonight, if you don't understand it, you better. Then if you don't understand it, you're still dead. You see, the issue in all of this is that they have declared us dead from birth. Until you reach the age of 21, you have everybody within the corporate, because they put you in the corporation as a corporation. And everybody within that corporation can make a legal determination for you if you allow them to. But this thing is all by your choice. And that's a hard thing for people to come to, is to start managing their own affairs. Because we have this propensity to say, well, I want somebody else to do this for me. I don't mind helping people do their documents. That is never the case. But somewhere along the line, you've got to start doing them yourself. Someone tonight said, well, who do I call in case something happens to you? I said, here's two names. Now, and I gave him two names. You know, I'm not in charge of that, what happens to me. And I know there was a question that come up. Somebody said that they heard on the radio. They didn't say what radio. They just heard on the radio that somebody that was teaching the bonds got arrested. And I said, number one, I do not teach bonds that they have any control over. That bond is simply a promise to pay. If I give you a $5 bill, I've simply given you a promise to pay, and it's no different than giving you a bond. If I hand you a bond, I've simply turned that part of the promise to pay over to you. Now it's your obligation to pay it. That's what the bond is about. You send it to them, they can't give it back to you, because in commerce, you cannot dishonor. You're either going to honor, you're going to dishonor. And as long as you honor, as long as you accept, you can do anything you want to. The instant you dishonor, you're taken in then as a dead person, and that dead person then is brought to trial. He has no right. And if you don't believe it that way, directly apply it to the probate statutes, and you'll see that there's where you are. It says you were brought in by the birth certificate. They created a dead person out of you until you're 21 years old. Somewhere along the line, you've got to decide whether you're alive or whether you're dead. Everybody runs around like they think they're alive. But when they get into what is called a system, they instantly are dead. They can't say a thing. Nobody listens to them. First lesson I learned when dealing with the IRS. Nobody listens to you. You should have done this. You should have done that. They wouldn't do that to you. I said, well, they did. Well, they wouldn't do it. You had to be doing something. You should have paid the taxes to begin with. And that type of thing. And that's the answers you would get. Well, number one, I'd come to the understanding that I didn't owe any taxes. And so at that point, then that's when the fight starts. Now, you know, having first learned, I'm going to go out there and tell them everything. I'm going to tell them, I'm going to hang myself every time I write to them, because I'm going to tell them how smart I am. See, but the issue is not telling them how smart you are. The smartest person in the world simply says, I accept your offer. And there's one word that you've got to put in there, and it destroys everything they do, and it's called truth. I accept your offer as truth. Not that it is true. You're not making that determination, because that creates an argument. You're saying it is as truth. You're presenting it to me as truth. So I'm going to accept it. Once I accept that thing, in commerce, I am the accommodating party. You've given me your contract, your offer. In all contracts, I have a right to look at that contract and decide whether or not I want it or not. So I accept it. I'm not going to argue with it back. You can do two things with a contract as soon as you get it. One of them, you can send it back to them and refuse it. You have 3 days to do that in. In the 3-day period, you simply say, I refuse your offer to contract under Regulation Z and Truth in Lending. You have 3 days to reject or accept any contract. But you can also say, I accept as true, and I'm going to return it to you for closure. Now the contract belongs to you, doesn't it? You've accepted it, and now you're the holder in due course. It's called being the holder in due course. Everything they've done to you, remember I taught you about the law merchants. The UCC is simply the law merchants codified. All they did is stuck codes to it. The law merchant says it's all about contracts. The law merchant says that if you have a contract with somebody and they file suit on you, immediately they have a summary judgment on you in that courtroom. Now, in order for them to solidify that, they had to do a lot of things to us. Number one, they had to take the innocent plea out of the court, which they did in 1973. They also had to take the intent, which the state always had to prove intent. And now you have to prove intent. The intent was placed against the charge that they make against you. The only person in the county who can file a charge against you is the district attorney of that county. He is the first person you fire in all of these documents I give you. That stops anyone from being allowed to file a charge against you. No one has the authority to represent you in your business, your affairs, without your permission. This is a game that attorneys have been playing all these years. You're practicing law without a license. No. They're the only ones who can practice law without a license, and it's a felony for them to do so. But they've always charged other people with doing that. Why is it that way? Because they don't have a license. You see, they never were issued a license. They have a certification. And then they are allowed by the Supreme Court to practice in the courts of Texas. Now, nothing in that says, and in commerce, now you got to take this into commerce, because this is where everything takes place. In commerce, and I don't use these things, but I just tell it to them because you have to internalize this. CFR 2711 says all crimes are commercial crimes. And then it goes to list what are commercial crimes. It only does part of them, but what it's telling you in there, it says that prostitution is a commercial crime. Taking dope is a commercial crime. Stealing is a commercial crime. Murder is a commercial crime. And what they're saying is anyone, if you do not have a license to do it, it is a commercial crime for you to do it. This is the crux of the thing of someone making a legal determination for you when you fire them, is that they now are committing a commercial crime. They are practicing law without a license. You have to license anyone that represents you. Now, you will license them in many ways. If they write you a letter and you just sit down and answer that letter, You've licensed them because now a third party has come in and you've allowed the third party to come in and represent you. You don't, in 1980, they then put the attorneys on both sides of the court can represent you. Guess who's always representing you in that courtroom? The district attorney. He's always representing you. He files papers on you, doesn't he? How can he file papers if he's not representing you? And it became real clear on, I don't know if, well, they're not here tonight. Yeah, he is. He's here. But a commercial lien was placed on a company, big company. And all of a sudden, he gets, they call and want his wife to come in and talk to him. So we said, well, we accept your offer and we're going to return it for closure. Next thing he gets is an offer from an attorney. And this is the way the letter read, and this is what it's all about. Dear so-and-so, we have been retained to represent XYZ Company. That's fine. He can write that all he wants to. He can represent them all day long. But then he said, and you will no longer send your documents to the company. You'll send everything to me. And you will quit filing those crazy papers with them. You're running this company's credit. You're ruining their on the stock market. You're destroying them. And you'll quit doing it. And he went on for about 2 more paragraphs. And when I saw it, I laughed because the company paid about $25,000 to retain that law firm. And they get to write one letter. Because all he wrote across there is, okay, I'm accept everything you stated as true, and I'm going to return it to you for closure in this matter and discharge. If you think you're representing me, you're fired. How many more letters can you write to the man? You see what the game they play? They write to you a letter as if they're representing somebody else, but in that letter they're telling you what to do. How can they tell you what to do if they're not representing you? So the issue is to get you to bite on that and to write something back. I don't care about you, and then you're hooked. The issue every time with the courts, when you get a letter, remember some of them say, greetings, you've been sued. I like say, greetings, you've gone into the army. And it's literally what happens to you. So they say greetings. They never tell you you're going to court. It says you are hereby ordered to appear on this matter. In other words, you're for a hearing. It says nothing about a court. It says a hearing. So now you're going to go into the judge's chambers, and he's going to hear you in his chambers. And he's going to write court up on the building. But if a mouse comes by and you write cat across him, it doesn't make him a cat. He is still a mouse. And that is what's happened with us. They stopped the courts in 73. They could no longer open the courts. And you say, why is that? Because they took the innocent plea out. There's nothing to argue. There's only this dead person and the probate sitting across there that they're going to clobber because they got a summary judgment. And they go through this Mickey Mouse thing or this dog and pony show of making people think that they're earning their money. Boy, they're really fighting for that thing. When the defendant's attorney is selling him out to the court or to the other side. They're both together. Because the defendant can't win. So the only thing the defendant's attorney can do is try to get the best deal for him he can get. Hey, I got you 20 years instead of 40. See, that's the best deal he could get. They then plea bargain. If you go back to 73, you'll find in there it's when they really started plea bargaining in earnest. Why? Because the defendant could not win, and why would the attorney then would be worthless, which he is. But it would start becoming apparent to people that he would be worthless because he is always lose. The defendant loses 99.5% of the time. They have screwed the things down so tight that they can't afford to let the defendant win. Because if the defendant wins, he can sue the district attorney and get his bond. So they can't allow him to win. And this is where it's all gone. And so they close the courts, and it's simply now a hearing, an administrative hearing in the judge's chamber. You go back, and the Administrative Procedures Act became the law of the court in 1973. The UCC law became the law of the land. If you don't believe it, read it, and that's what it tells you. Officially became the law of the land, I think it was about 1966. And what they simply did, it came from, see, they don't just do things overnight. This actually happened in 1938 with Erie Railroad versus Tompkins, which established contract law as being the law that would rule everything. So they had to bring the UCC in. And if anyone doesn't know it, Texas has never approved the UCC. They go by what is called Texas Government Code. They're real similar to the UCC, but they never approved the UCC. They just adopted under their own code. And so when we fill these UCC ones out, they're obligated to fill them out. But in the end, a lot of times it causes people trouble. But when they did this and shut the courts off, then you and I had nothing, and all you're doing is going in there as a dead person, and they're going to say, well, that policeman is charging him with going this, and so we're going to take part of his estate, $400 he has to pay. And so what happens in there is they try you as this corporation. They can't try anything but a corporation in court. You read the Bar Act, that's exactly what it says. They can't represent anyone but a created fiction or a corporation. And the Bar Act came in 1938. Came into all the states. It's real funny, isn't it? They all came into them all at the same time. The UCC came at the same time. The Administrative Procedures Act was passed in 1946, but it didn't become the official law of the court until 1973. The Administrative Procedures Act, or the administrative part of the court, is the admiralty part. That's where they get this thing of treating you any way they want to. There's no laws involved. It's simply the rules of the judge, whatever he rules. The funny part of it is when people have gone in and called their attention. The first time they did it, the judge just got up and walked off the bench. He didn't know what to say. And so what they do is they go back to the phone and they say, hey, you got this character in here that's brought this up. And now the cat's out of the bag on us holding just an administrative hearing. What do we do? So they start formulating this plan. And then the next time somebody comes in, he'll say, I'm not in my chambers. I'm out here. But you see, you have to go back and understand what chambers is. And chambers, it says, judge's chambers is really the king's bench, or the king's bank, is what it really comes out to be. It simply says that he is, wherever he sets up to do business, hearing motions, signing documents, outside of the court setting. So if they're not in judges' chambers, I don't know what they are. They can be sitting in that courtroom, but they're still in judges' chambers. He can set up in McDonald's, and it's the same thing. He can have an administrative hearing in McDonald's. So there is no court. So where you get into trouble, you go in there and you start trying to bring third-party information in there to bolster your case. Now, if you're a sovereign, where's your law book? If you're a sovereign, where's your law book? It's in your head. Whatever you declare, as long as it's truth, because you always have to declare truth. A sovereign always tells the truth. You ever seen a king? You remember in the movies where they're going to chop the guy's head off, and they bring him up there. And you ever seen an attorney rush up and say, "Hey, I have a stay here. Rule so and so says you can't chop his head off unless this, this, and this." You ever seen that? No. What does a sovereign do? He said, that ain't my rule book. Chop his head off and get that attorney and chop his head off too. You see, that is his thing. His law is here. And his law is treat another person the way you'd like to be treated and live your life the way you want to live it. What is the desire of every person, everybody I talk to? I just want them to leave me alone. What is this system all about? Getting everybody involved in your business. Tell on your neighbor. Boy, if he's having a beer party over there and he didn't invite you, call the cops. They're too loud. And here comes the cops out there. And it's simply because the man wanted to go. Most of the time he wanted to go to the party and he wasn't invited. But that's what they've got us doing, is telling on everybody. But once you become a sovereign and you look at these papers tonight, if you have any questions about them, don't leave unless you understand what it is. It is your freedom. You are going to declare for the first time in your life, you sign that thing, get 2 witnesses to sign it, and you make tons of copies and get 2 witnesses to sign them. And every time anybody, when you get stopped by the policeman, hand him one of those. Say, I believe you better read this. You see, because he is now fired. Nobody, he can't make a legal determination for you. But they do. Why? Because they got that gun and they're stuck out on the street and they say, you got a gun. Don't let them say anything to you. But you see, the issue is on these traffic tickets, and I'm finding more and more, I start understanding things, that once you sign all that stuff, then you've brought the third party into it. And that's why it's so hard to shake them. Not only that, that's the lifeblood of these cities and the banks. The banks have an open account that all these tickets are fed into. Bonds are made on them, 10 times what the ticket is. And if you don't pay the face of the bond, somebody's got to pay it, because that bond at 10 times the value is floating around out there somewhere. And so every so often the bank will call the city up and say, hey, you got so many of these things out. Either you're going to pay them or we're going to jerk them out of here and you're not going to have any line of credit. And so that's why they get these things. The Gestapo thing is coming around at 12 o'clock at night, knocking on your door and grabbing you and dragging you in. When you do this, mail a copy of that thing to the governor, mail a copy of it to the district attorney of your county, mail a copy of it to the sheriff of your county, and mail a copy to the mayor. And from that point on, and you'll see in this, I gave you one instance of a lady who kept her house simply by doing what I'm telling you. And she took those things, she hand-delivered them. She had 3 people that went with her, and they would walk up to these people and just hand it to them. You've been served. And when she went down and she had been notified by in Colorado, the treasurer, the county treasurer, is the one who is the trustee of the property. He's also an attorney, so he's also the trustee of all land. When they put their land, or when they buy a house, the land is immediately turned over to the United States. It goes back to the Roosevelt thing, where Roosevelt declared all property in the country now belongs to the state and will be used for the good of the state. So every time you bought something, your house is going to be used to go against the bankruptcy that the country was in. And so what happened is, as I got her documents, started reading them, it's real apparent in there who the character was that was going to get rid of her house. I'd been told in Colorado that if you're late paying your taxes, it's sold the next day. And I couldn't understand that, because in Texas they can't take your house like that. I mean, they can't take your house for non-payment of taxes, if you know what you're doing. But anyway, when you read that, it was very obvious he was the trustee. And in fact, it said in there he is a trustee for the United States for all the property. So he has a right. As soon as you don't pay those things, he just sells. He has people that sit there and buy that property. And then if you want it back, you can go down and get it. You can go down and get it back. You have to pay the taxes plus you have to pay him interest on whatever he spent to buy that. You have to pay him more money. And so that's the way they operated. And so she went down there, this man, she thought they was going to have the sale. We always go to the courthouse steps, don't we? A lot of times they're not there, but that's where they say they're going to sell it. So she got a letter from the county treasurer that said, your house will be auctioned off in my office on this date. She went down there the day before and filed this document on him and told him, said, you've been served. Next day she came down there with 3 or 4 people that was going to pass out saying this house has been discharged, the bond has been issued, you have no right to the house. There was nobody there except the secretary there in the office. The treasurer didn't show up. Why? He had been fired. He could not participate. So no one showed up. They did not have the sheriff, didn't have anybody, because they went systematically around and served every one of them. And so they didn't show up. So now she's so ecstatic about her house, she gets to keep it, and nobody's bothered her. Nobody's coming around telling her anything. But this is where your freedom is you've got to, after the age of 21, you've got to file this document. You've got to declare that you are, and it tells you in there, it says, equality under the law is mandatory, and equality under the law is paramount and mandatory by law. And so once you state that, you say, I am competent to handle my own affairs. And a sovereign cannot be sued in his or her court. That goes back to the Federalist Papers and all that. It gives 3 things that you couldn't sue in court. One of them was the government, one was the state, and one was the sovereign. You couldn't do those 3. So once you've declared your sovereignty, I'm able to see you become a sovereign because you can make your own decisions. And so once you do that, now the issue is this. Everything is in commerce. So you don't want the dishonor in commerce. You want to be an honorable person. You don't care how dishonorable they are. You simply take their document and you start it out. I've received your offer, dated so-and-so, and I'm going to accept it. So you have 3 days to reject it if you want to. But I'm going to accept it as truth. And I'm going to return it to you for discharge and closure of this matter. The following persons, and then you start with a district attorney. You name it, district attorney. You name anybody that has had anything to do with this, clerk of the court, all of this, you name them. And then you say, are hereby declared incompetent by me. Once you declare them incompetent, now you can fire them for being incompetent. And so at that point, you simply say, they are all hereby fired from making any legal determination about my affairs. And then you give your order. Now you own that. You own the court. You own whatever you're involved in. You own it totally. Because no one else there is competent. So you have to give your order. I want this done, and I want you to return all the papers concerning this to me within 3-day period. And then whatever else you want from them. And I want the $785 back that you took from them. You put that in your order. And then you sign it and put the date underneath it. And it's literally, that is your right to do that. I told y'all about taking the court away from the judge down in Houston, and that's becoming more funnier every day. She fell off the bench when they took the court, and she told the lady, she said, if you say any more, I'm going to hold you in contempt. And the lady said, no, ma'am, this is my court. You've been declared incompetent, and this is my court, and you're a despicable person. And the judge fell off the bench. Because she couldn't say anything. She was declared incompetent. Everybody in that courtroom is incompetent. You have to understand that. They're all corporations. They're all representatives of a corporation. And a corporation is a fiction. It does not exist except in people's minds. Somebody says, hey, I'm going to start an IBM company. So they go around, they say, hey, he's starting an IBM company. Everybody else say, well, he's just starting an IBM. And after a while they say, boy, the IBM company. And everybody thinks that all of a sudden somebody's been resurrected. That IBM has life. IBM is a fiction. It's just a thought in somebody's mind. It has nothing to do with anything other than to conduct commercial business. That's all it's for. It has nothing to do with you and I. And you can declare they don't exist at any time you so desire. We used to do this through what is called the negative averment, where you simply state who you are, and then at the end you'd say, the following things are hereby declared as corporations, and I declare they do not exist. And